She's not on Skype. It says here we're on the auto server.
Now we are.
We are. We're online? We're on air?
We're on air. Sorry, folks, it wasn't letting us on. Good evening. It's The Art of Dreaming with Michael Hemmingson. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Ahmad. Here's The Art of Dreaming with Michael Hemmingson. The show's going to be a little different. My Saturday show has been combined with this show, which would be better. And my guest today is Anya Briggs, and we'll get to her in a minute. I just have one thing to talk about, and that on Benjamin Fulford's new posting this week, he talks about out there near the Philippines, there's some sort of confrontation / battle between 8 U.S. warships and a joint Chinese-Russian fleet. In the last week and a half or so, there's been, in that various region, there's been seismic activity, which the rumor going around is actually from explosives. Our good old U.S. Warships are looking for a 25-mile trench, which apparently has tons of gold there. So they're after the gold, and the Chinese are according to Fulford, the Chinese have publicly announced that they are willing to go to war over this dispute. Now, I've been talking for the last 2 weeks about Chinese troops on the Mexican-U.S. border. Certainly, if it does escalate to war over this gold, which is trillions of dollars of gold, that would certainly be one good excuse for the Chinese troops to come in. Now, my guest for the next 2 hours, I'm very pleased to bring in Anya Briggs from the Bronx. She is an MKUltra survivor, channeler, UFO experiencer, and all that good stuff. Are you there, Anya?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me? My voice seems to be going out. I don't know why.
Well, I can hear you just fine. You sound great.
And hopefully we're on the air. Hey, let me check.
Oh, we are. They can hear us.
Okay.
Okay, I got you here. Why don't we start on you with some background? What happened to you in 2008 with the UFO you witnessed and the memories that were triggered?
Sure.
Okay.
I guess something extraordinary happened to me on August 15th, 2008. I was coming home from work and I saw a UFO in the sky, and it started telepathically communicating with me. And it continued to do so until it reached the point where it wasn't just a extraordinary UFO sighting. It became a regular part of my life. And I guess I took the leap from experiencer into full-blown contactee when I had a series of paranormal experiences that culminated with a group of beings who called themselves a benevolent faction of the Anunnaki. And they appeared to me in my bedroom as squiggly lines of light. And they told me telepathically that they were going to give me the birthright of my memories back. And then they hit me with some, not literally, I wasn't hit physically, but it was like a beam of light was sort of hit in my forehead, right where my pineal gland is. And after that happened, it was all over. It was just a tumbling open of memories of being a military abductee, of being an experiencer of UFO phenomena, I began to automatically write information to the tune of 650 handwritten pages over the course of the next 9 months of my life. And in June, I believe, or July of 2009.
Excuse me, somebody has a radio on in the background. They need to shut it off, please.
Okay, it's off. Sorry.
Okay.
Go on.
So in June or July of 2009, I think it was early July. No, it was late June. Excuse me. I began full-blown channeling beings from supposedly outer space, and also I started receiving telepathic messages between 2008 and that point in 2009, supposedly from people in a above top secret, many levels above top secret group of individuals in a faction of space fleets who could be affiliated with Space Command. And I know how crazy this sounds.
No, not at all.
It's just regular, just plain folk confession.
Right.
But yeah, I basically began my official psychic medium experience, and then it got to the point when I was channeling for verbally as opposed to automatic writing. It got to the point where I had to drop everything and pursue this as a permanent state of career / labor of love. And I haven't looked back since. And now I am a full-blown psychic medium.
And you offer your services to the public at large? And
That's correct. I work with people on a sort of spiritual life coach journey, if you will. And I help people find what was lost. And it takes many forms of my abilities. I'm clairvoyant, which means I see with my third eye. I'm clairaudient. I'm all the clairs. Taste, sound, hearing, touch, etc., etc. I'm also an empath, so I can feel what people are feeling. I'm an animal intuitive. I can telepathically communicate with animals sometimes, not all the time. I am a medium. I can speak with disembodied people who no longer are in corporeal form. I guess you could say I'm a telepath as well. That might be souped up technology at work, providing that ability, but I do that as well, obviously. What else?
So you're saying you're you could operate at one of those pet psychics?
Yeah, it's not my main focus, but occasionally, just as with mediumship, sometimes people don't want to come forward. The same thing goes with animals that are still alive. Some of them don't want to communicate with you. It's not a question of not being able to. It's just a question of some of them want to be left alone, and some of them come right up to you and they start telling you everything. And especially if the pet owner is saying, why is my animal acting this way? And then they'll bring the animal into the session. Most of my work is done via Skype video conferencing sessions. And the animal will tell me right away what's going on. But that's only happened a few times. That isn't really my main focus. My main focus is usually, I also am a past life advisor. And I'm kind of a soup to nuts holistic practitioner in that regard, because what happens is there's usually, you have had a couple of films made, I think, from your screenwriting career. Is there the establishing shot? I call it the establishing shot. Usually pops up first with the energies. I do energy work as well, and the energies, the energies tell me what is the most pertinent, most important, most germane thing I need to talk about with the client right then and there. And sometimes it's not necessarily what they came into the session to talk about, but invariably the issue that they're bringing to me oftentimes will interlace with the establishing energy, if you will. And keep in mind, pretty much all of this was activated shortly after my experience with these people who claim they were here to give me my memories back, the birthright of my memories back. So I call this a divine intervention kind of thing, because this was not something I was pursuing, Michael. This happened to me. I didn't seek it out. Although I did have psychic experiences my entire adult life on and off, I knew that I had something going on that wasn't maybe happening with the general population at large necessarily. But I couldn't control it. And then after this visitation and subsequent activation, I I can now summon it. Or that's a bad term because that sounds like I'm wielding some kind of secret genie or something. But it's not. It's from within. It's universal life force energy that I work with. That's my primary tool that I work with.
So prior to this sighting in 2008, you'd never seen any objects in the sky, or?
No, well, what had happened was in 2007, I had an encounter with a gentleman who I believe was not of this earth. He was like no one else I'd ever seen before, and I later came to know him as being a being from Procyon, and he called himself Roan, R-O-A-N, which I always thought was a really cool name. But, you know, they don't really have names, some of them. They just do that to humor us as humans because we need to establish something. But most ETs tend to identify themselves through their energy signature, which is like a thumbprint. It's unique to that energy field of that person, and no one else has it, not even clones. So what happened was it was an unseasonably warm December evening in 2007, and I had just gotten off work, and I wanted to walk around and take in the air because it was a beautiful 50-degree weather evening in New York in December, which doesn't happen that often in December. So I was walking around and just enjoying the night air, and I came to a neighborhood called Chelsea, and I was walking east in this neighborhood, and there was a Starbucks, and there was the most extraordinary specimen of a human being I think I've ever seen in my entire life before or since. He was a 7 foot tall, well, he was about 6'10" is what he told me later, but the 7 foot tall, bald guy dressed head to toe in white clothing, his shoes, his pants, his sweater, everything, and he was very awkwardly holding the largest mug of tea I've ever seen in my life, and I just remember thinking the little things that really I just remember thinking, that's really funny.
We're getting a lot of static from you, Mike.
From me?
Yeah, something to do. It's coming over your microphone.
Is it gone?
At the moment, yes. But
okay.
It was overriding her. Couldn't hear her.
She was cutting out on my side.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay, so the guy, he had a cup of tea.
Yeah, he had this really large, unusually large blue mug of tea that I don't think they have in any Starbucks that I know of, because it's the largest mug I've ever seen in my life. And it had this little dinky string with the square of paper on the end, which I thought was so funny with the tea bag. So I just thought that's a really unusual touch, because something told me that this was a hologram for some reason, that maybe the man was not there, but that he was communicating with me through some kind of advanced form of technology to make me think that he was actually sitting in the Starbucks. There was no one else in the Starbucks. That's what I don't understand. Except for the two employees that were just swatting towels at each other and playing, and they acted like they didn't see this guy at all, and he was extraordinary. He's the kind of person, if you saw him walk down the street, you would say, that's a superhero. That's not a human being. That's somebody who could leap buildings in a single bound, you know? He was very tall, very muscular. He had the longest arms I've ever seen in my life on a human being. And he was holding the cup exactly perpendicular to the ground, sort of with his elbows sticking straight out. And he had the most wonderful posture of anyone I've ever seen in my life. And he was just sitting there. And it just seemed like he was waiting for me to notice him on purpose. And then he gave me this glaring look. It was like a 50-yard stare. It was the kind of stare you don't want to see in a dark alley, you know? Mm-hmm. And I thought for a minute, oh, my God, this guy's going to come out of the store and kill me. What did I do? And then he broke into this beautiful beaming smile, like he was just kidding. And then the next thing I know, I feel this coil of energy wrap around me, and I can't move. I'm standing there right on the corner of 7th Avenue, and I cannot move to save my life. And he sends me this universal love energy. It just was the most extraordinary feeling. It was the most wonderful feeling of just unconditional love. And he was pummeling me with it. And I couldn't move. And then he did this for about, I want to say, not that long, but it felt like it could have been a couple of minutes, but it was probably only more like 15 seconds or so, but it just went on and on and on. And it was incredible. I thought I was going to fall down on the street. It was so overwhelming. And then he unwrapped this coil of energy. I don't know how else to describe it. And I remember thinking, I wonder what would happen if I just went in there and sat down next to him. And I got as far as I wonder, and he cut me off telepathically. Now, it wasn't with conscious words that I heard in my head. I actually felt the feeling of what he was saying in my stomach, which is really weird because it wasn't like a thought entered my head. It went right to my stomach, and I felt the feeling, and the feeling was, no, move along, it would interfere. That's like, if that had been the thought, that would have been the thought that it was. And so rather than be offended or creeped out or alarmed, I actually became quite embarrassed, as if I had broken some kind of manners or protocol. And so and even as soon as I said I wonder to myself, before I could even finish the thought, there was like a brick wall of energy that was put up right in front of me that would have prevented me from trying to cross the street to go into the shop anyway. I couldn't do it. I couldn't physically get that block of energy out of my way if I wanted to. So he sent this feeling of, no, it would interfere, move along. And I said, okay, sorry, I'm sorry if I interrupted. And I just kept walking. And I had been, there's something magical to the end of the story. I went to art school. I was sort of drawing on canvas and fiddling around with stuff, and I wanted to buy an overhead projector, because a lot of artists use overhead projectors to draw on canvas to paint or draw. And I've been sort of going back and forth about justifying the expense, and lo and behold, not 5 minutes later, I walk by this elementary school, and the superintendent is removing a beautiful, pristine overhead projector, and he plops it down not 15 feet in front of me. And so I took it as also, the no, it would interfere, move along thing is like, well, you're going to miss out if you don't move along very quickly. Almost as if he knew that I wanted an overhead projector. I don't know. It's like synchronicities like that started happening to me left and right after I had this encounter. And they just started escalating to the point where I felt like my whole day was one big synchronicity, and I was just I'd never been more honed in to the right place at the right time in my entire life. And it was an incredible, exhilarating feeling. And then for the next 9 months, I just started becoming really obsessive. I like to liken that 9-month period of my life as the sort of being like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like with the mashed potatoes on the tabletop and everything, and he's making a mountain out of mashed potatoes. I became completely obsessed with anything UFOs, the Disclosure Project, Project Camelot, et cetera, and I just started researching, sometimes to the tune of 12 or 15 hours a day. I wouldn't even leave my home. I would just like skip work and just stay home and research UFOs. It completely magnetized me towards the subject. And then I remember about several days before seeing the UFO on August 15th, 2008, I did sign the online petition that had been going around that said, "Do you wish that we show up?" And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I would encourage you to just Google search a petition called "Do You Wish That We Show Up?" And supposedly the author is an off-worlder who is benevolent, and it is a request to humanity to see if we can start, as grown-ups, establishing fair and equitable contact with beings from outer space. And supposedly, I don't know how many people have signed that petition, but it's pretty significant. It's got to be in the hundreds of thousands by now, if not millions. And I did sign it like 3 days before this happened. I don't think I've ever mentioned that before in an interview, but I have always thought that was an interesting thing. I don't know that the timing was kind of interesting, but So I got home from work that night on the 15th, and I saw this light in the sky, and I thought it was a helicopter, but it wasn't making any noise, and it was coming right from my building. And it was really scary for a minute, because I thought it was literally just, it came out of nowhere. There was no light in the sky, and then boom, suddenly it was there in the middle of the sky, way too low for flight space. And I just thought, this is it. This thing's going to crash into my building. And then it materialized from a beam of light into a tiered UFO. And I thought it looked like a wedding cake. That's what I called it. And then I looked at some of the drawings online of some of the, I guess, the Pleiadian light ships, whatever you call them, different types of beam ships, yeah, the different types of beam ships, because I didn't have anything to base this on other than what I had researched about the Pleiadians. I was really, the gateway drug is usually the Pleiadians for ET lovers. And then, everybody wants to hang out with a Pleiadian. And,
well, it's because they're tall, blonde supermodels.
Right. And they're, loving and kind. And actually, who showed up that night were, I think, possibly Pleiadians. And I didn't know what to do. I just was really surprised. The thing sort of lazily flew over, just grazed about 6 feet above the top of the roof of my building, which is about 120 feet in the air. Not very high in the air, pretty low in the air for a flying vehicle. And it had it looked like a fluorescent round blue light underneath the base. And then it was all white. And I think there were a couple of lights blinking or not, I can't remember, but it just kind of lazily, it was almost like teasing me. It was like, see, here I am, look at me. It really seemed quite deliberate. And it just flew gracefully right over my building. And then I'm just standing there gawking, just stock still, I can't do anything. And then about 15 seconds after that, there's this, I guess I would call it about medicine ball size from the angle I was looking at it, this round metal ball. And it had one red light, one blue light, and one white light. And one of the lights was blinking. I can't remember which. But it just kind of puttered along after, sort of like this little mascot or this little pet dog kind of following its master at about the same pace, but following about 15 seconds behind. And then I just, I questioned my sanity very quickly, and then I just kind of laughed, and I thought to myself, I think I just saw a UFO. And then I said again, I think I just saw a UFO. And then I said again, oh my God, I think I just saw a UFO. Nothing prepares you for it consciously when you see these kinds of things. They're just so extraordinary. So I kind of, my mind was thinking run up the stairs, but there was a part of me, I was just in such shock that I just kind of slowly walked up the stairs. And I get to the top of my building. I live on the top floor, and I open the door, and they're waiting outside in the air about a quarter mile away from my window, my kitchen window. And the wedding cake UFO is just stock still in the sky. It's just sitting there in the sky. But the little medicine ball, pet dog, whatever you want to call it, thing is just doing crazy figure eights all around it, just dancing all around this UFO. And I suddenly hear, telepathically, this chorus of voices saying, "We love you, Anya. We love you. We love you. We love you. We love you." Like, so, it was so funny. It was just like a Disney movie or something. It was so funny. It was just like, and then all the animals in the forest start singing a song kind of thing. It was just like that level of crazy. And, and I'm still thinking, I've got to be dreaming. This can't be real. I've got to be having a dream or something. But at the same time, I was laughing because I could hear their voices in my head. And then the thought occurred to me, oh, I'm listening to voices in my head that are not mine. And then I thought, great, that's going to sound great if I ever tell anyone about this. And I just kept thinking, no one's going to believe me. This is so crazy. This is so crazy. But I was delighted. It was a really positive experience. It wasn't scary at all. There was nothing negative about it. But it just, that was it. And then I remember I had watched this 3-hour video, not actually 2 days before, which I think is interesting as well, about the Pleiadians. And at the end of the video, this gentleman says a phrase that supposedly is the Pleiadian Greeting. It's like a catch-all phrase for hello, goodbye, and we love you, or something like that. And so I remembered that suddenly, and I started saying it out loud, like over and over. And then the ship started bouncing up and down a little bit, sort of like an acknowledgement of that. And the crazy 8-ball just went even crazier when I started saying that. And there just seemed to be some kind of verification that I was sort of speaking to who I thought I was speaking with. I never really ventured to say I actually was speaking with Pleiadians because I really don't know, but that's the closest approximation based on my research and like what was going on at the time. I don't know, maybe it wasn't, maybe they were mimicking them or something, but shortly after that, I had a Pleiadian guide appear, and she said her name was Aya, and that she was 300 years old, I think. They lived to be pretty old, so that's considered pretty young. And she looked like she was like a 19-year-old girl, and she was blonde-haired. She didn't have blue eyes, she had brown eyes, I think.
She appeared to you physically, or?
No, she showed herself to me in my third eye. Like, I could see her clairvoyantly. Okay. It was like a telephone call. I guess, I don't know if I'm sort of on the cutting edge of experience or whatever version 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 I am since, say, the 1950s or 1960s when people started reporting like physical contact with people. But it seems like most of my contact experiences are either holographic, which could create, I can understand why people would say, oh, well, that could be stealth technology or some kind of, government program. Maybe it is. I don't know. I've never definitively said this is exactly what's happening to me, but I have had definitive experiences as well that would lead me to believe that it can't all be, like a Project Bluebeam kind of thing. But that holographic, we shouldn't be scared of the term holographic technology. I'm fond of using the term a knife can cut your food or it can kill you. It's just a tool. And I am of the belief that some races would just rather than physically appear. When you hang out with your friends, you aren't always physically hanging out with your friends. You email them, you Skype session with them, you have a telephone call with them. You aren't always physically hanging out with your friends, right? So I think it's sort of the same sensibility. If they want to visit with me, why would they buy, if they've already, like, say, implanted me with some kind of, I don't know, cranial implant or ocular implant that would allow me to hook up or interface with some kind of computer software or technology that allows me to see in 3D what they're showing me as a form of, 3 or 5 or 7 or 9D, whatever dimensional existence they live in, it's easier for them to just transmit information holographically to me. And again, I'm sure that's probably been reverse engineered and used with secret technology that's probably black shelved for, the vast majority of the human populace. I don't know. But
well, what's interesting is Alex Collier has said that his people that he's in contact with, the Andromedans and others, is that they all use holographic technology for everything. Like, they don't need a house. Or if they need a house or a bed or a vehicle, they just create it holographically, and then when they're done with it, they turn the holograph off.
Yeah, and I mean, some people would say, oh, you got that from an episode of Star Trek, but then what I'm told is that a lot of people in Hollywood who write for shows like, Battlestar Galactica, and listen, there's other ways to channel, just put it that way, and artists very often, writers and artists and filmmakers, they're all channeling too. They really are. And, I know people who are very successful in the film industry, and I've asked them, and they know even more famous filmmakers and so forth, and I've asked them, I've said, come on, they've got about this, they've got to have access to this. They've also talked to a lot of military intelligence people sometimes, but sometimes they haven't. And in those cases, you have to wonder, is somebody communicating them? I did read somewhere when Gene Roddenberry.
Okay, we're coming up on a break here, and we'll be back with Anya Briggs.
listening to Revolution Radio. We'll be right back after this short break, so stay tuned.
This is Rebecca Jernigan. Join me and my co-host Sienna Leah for Real Women Stepping Up and the Men Who Love Them. Live every Thursday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. An interactive, lively, solution-oriented show getting into what real women are about. We explore how to let go of programming to claim our authenticity and divinity. We offer in-depth information and processes for both male and female. Tune in, share, and experience right here on freedomslips.com, Thursdays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern.
Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat masses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
The cheering masses. Welcome back to the Art of Dreaming with your transdimensional host, Michael Hemmingson. This is Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I just want to make a mention that we are user-supported, and we don't have any commercials, so no one can tell us what we can air. We do operate on your donations. So if you go onto the webpage at freedomslips.com, you'll see a little button there. You could sponsor a specific show and host, like me, or you just make a general donation, or buy a banner ad, or any other good stuff. So keep that in mind if you want to help us out and stay on the air. Now we're back with Anya Briggs and her paranormal experiences. You're still with us there, Anya?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, great. I seem on my end, I seem to be cutting out a lot. I don't know if someone's trying to interfere with this call or not. I know that when Carrie Cassidy has her Friday night shows, apparently there's always some hackers trying to interfere with her thing.
Are you on a phone, Michael?
Yeah.
That's what it is it's got a noise-canceling mic, and every time you make noise, it jumps on.
Oh, okay. So when these beings came and told you, Anya, about, your bringing back your memories and your life on other planets, did they show you or tell you what other planets and other lives you had?
They would show me and tell me, and when they would tell me, I would just suddenly, it was like a knowing. They would be like this portal opened up in my head, and there was just like this whooshing feeling of acknowledgement. Kind of like if you remember something you hadn't thought about in a long time, like a classmate in kindergarten or something like that, or a birthday party you had when you were 5, and you suddenly remember, and and you just remember, oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, okay. And for some reason, the pace was very fast. They told me they had fast-tracked me because I was turned off for a long time, and they said they had activated my DNA, that there were most people, I guess, I'm not a scientist, but supposedly there's what we call junk DNA that is considered useless, quote-unquote, DNA strands that we have. There's something like 12 strands of DNA, I think it is, that we have. And only 2 supposedly are what are currently activated, for lack of a better term, or used for hair color, eye color, personality traits, that kind of thing. And supposedly I have like a 3rd or a 4th strand activated, which allows me to be basically a psychic human being, which is our birthright as well as human beings. And they told me that I didn't know about this at the time, but then often I would have these communications, or I would have these paranormal experiences, or these extraordinary peak experiences, if you will. And then I would be on YouTube or something, and I would find the video that would corroborate the experience I had just had. So if anyone's thinking, oh, you're just reading a bunch of books and so forth, yeah, I had that 9-month period where I was researching a bunch of stuff, but there was so much that I wasn't looking at. I was pretty myopic. I was pretty sort of tunnel vision about what I was researching, and all these things were happening that were so wild that I had just didn't expect at all. And I would have the experience, and then I would find something to corroborate it. So as far as the DNA was concerned, they also told me that, and I know a lot of people get scared of this, and a lot of people say negative things about the Anunnaki, but the beings that I was in touch with said that they were a faction that never wanted humanity to be slaves. And if you've ever researched the ancient Sumerian texts, or the clay tablets where the cuneiform came from, and Zechariah Sitchin's work, supposedly he talked about there were 2 brothers or 2 siblings, Enlil and Enki, and then there was Lord Anu, who was supposedly the head of the Anunnaki, and they ruled over humanity, and they made humanity a slave race, but supposedly Enlil always wanted us to be free, and that it wasn't their place to do this, but Enki was the one who won this sort of battle or argument. And supposedly the faction that visited me was the faction that was Team Humanity. And that I was sort of a first waver, perhaps, of a group of people on the planet who were Anunnaki, that they shared the same bloodline as the Anunnaki, who were not Illuminati, who were, the Freemasonry thing is based all around bloodline and codes, and they're obsessed with DNA and genetics and so forth, and they're eugenicists, right? But this faction who came to me claimed that they were here, they call themselves basically a rebel faction, who had broken away from that. And you don't hear about that at all. Everybody hates the Anunnaki. They're really bad and mean and awful. Well, maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe they're just master manipulators and the whole thing was a joke on my expense. I don't know. But, they taught me so much in that awakening period of time between September 2008 and June or July of 2009 about myself. But it was at an incredibly fast pace. I was being schooled. I was learning. I mean, it was 24/7. And then I started getting downloads. That's the only thing I could call it. It felt like my brain was this computer that was receiving software upgrades continually, to the tune of, it got so ridiculous that sometimes I would have to fall asleep. I would go into this like dead zone or something, and I would just become exhausted, and I would have to lie down. And I would wake up, and it would be 6 hours later. And this would be after getting a full night's rest, a full 8 or 9 hours rest before that. Because I was needing so much sleep to begin with. It was ridiculous. So it really felt like I was in this kind of holding cell or cocoon or womb for like 9 months of my life. I mean, it was hard because I was really broke to begin with, and I was already having kind of an existential crisis before this. I'd been sort of, going from job to job. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. And then this before I knew I was a military abductee, and I thought I was just chalking it up to, my depression and my lack of purpose was chalked up to just being sort of, just a depressive type. And what I didn't realize is that there was this incredible double and in some cases triple and quadruple life that I was living that had to do with the secret space program. It had to do with just turning physics on its head as we know it. It had to do with time travel. It had to do with, a multiverse, that we are multidimensional beings of light. This was a big part of my education from these people. And man, they schooled me. I mean, they had me visit myself 300 years in the future. And this was a telepathic communication. I have no idea if this is me, but every fiber in my being said, yes, this is correct. This is real. And then they had me visit people who I was in past lives, and some people who are familiar with reincarnation may say, that's impossible. You can't do that. Well, according to them, you can, because we are multidimensional. And one lifetime in particular was supposedly a woman who died 3 years before I was physically born in this lifetime. Her name's Marion Davies. She was a silent film star who had something like a lifelong affair with William Randolph Hearst. And she was the subject of the Peter Bogdanovich film, The Cat's Meow. And I think Kirsten Dunst played her in the movie, and Eddie Izzard is in it, and he plays Chaplin. And it's all about this murder that occurs on Hearst's boat, that it's suspected it was a crime of passion because, Marion Davies was supposedly flirting with this guy, but it didn't happen. It was a misunderstanding. So anyway, I'm supposedly Marion Davies, this silent film star as well. And they're showing me these people. They're introducing them to me telepathically they're able to access even that. This is advanced civilizations we're talking about that can access the planes between life and death. And that there is an angelic hierarchy as well. There's an angelic realm, and that they work in tandem with ETs. Certain races, certain, non-regressive, pro-life, procreation, pro-love groups. It was just mind-boggling to me. But at the same time, while I'm being given all this information, I feel like I know this already. It's almost like I feel like I'm repeating some kind of schooling that was already given to me like hundreds of thousands of years ago. And then, in fact, they showed me them, and they clairvoyantly showed me. I saw this like a screen in a movie. It was crazy. One of my lifetimes in Lemuria, where they had floating cities. They had like floating gardens in the air, and I was a master botanist, and I was able to make gardens float in the air. And then it's really funny because Aaron McCullum, he sent me a photo of that once. He sent me a drawing of it once, and it was exactly what I had been shown. Because I was telling him about that, of a lifetime in Lemuria, and he really liked that. And so he sent me a drawing of this floating garden. And that's what people did then, before the Atlantean times, when people became arrogant and thought of themselves as gods rather than being a part of God. They thought of themselves as the new gods, and then they became arrogant and they made technology the new god, and that's when everything fell apart. And then the deluge happened. But that's happened many times in our history. So they told me all about that as well. They told me about galactic history. Let's just say I like the Lemurians a lot more than the Atlanteans. Everybody goes on and on and on about Atlantis, but I think they're cocky bastards. So I'm not very fond of it.
What do the Lemurians look like?
Oh, they're just, I don't know. We wore, I mean, for some reason I want to say robes. I was given a vision of people who were basically nude, like beautiful kind of prototype, like sort of like the Pleiadian model types, sort of walking around this sort of Arcadian paradise But if they were working on personal issues, say, if they were working on emotional development, there was a type of sort of semi-transparent colored clothing they would wear, and it was a form of color therapy. And in fact, it was like light and color therapy were used for psychological well-being, but it was also used for healing. And so if you were, say, having, they hadn't mastered disease, but they would sort of mastered ways of coping with it so that they could live for long periods of time. And they used psychic technology to overcome ailments and so forth. And they used disease as a form of challenge, a form of education. So disease was a metaphor for something else, and it would manifest. And then when you wanted to know, when you were ready to heal from it, or were you were ready to counterbalance the effects of that ailment, some people would give themselves diseases on purpose to see what that feeling was like, so they would know how to combat it and become stronger physically and mentally. And so these sort of transparent kind of mesh type pieces of clothing, you could see the nude body underneath, but it would be a specific color that person would wear. Like if somebody was working on their heart chakra, the color that's associated for that would be green. And green is also healing. So if you want to heal, you wear green. I mean, this was the technology they were giving me as an example.
Have you ever heard of the Lemorian Foundation in Ramona, California?
No, I haven't.
Ramona is like out, like in between the desert and the city. It's sort of a rural cowboy area. In fact, they have cowboy poetry readings there. But anyway, out there up on a hill is the Lemorian Foundation, and these are people who all say that they were originally Lemurians. And in order to join this foundation, you have to prove to them like certain things that happened, like, oh, I remember this. Yeah. But the interesting thing is this Lemorian Foundation is really involved in the Ramona community. There's a couple of Lemurians on the school board there, and they push Lemurian type education, and they also have free clinics there, and the free clinics use Lemurian based herbal or whatever healing stuff.
Well, that would make sense because California was a part of the Pacific. I mean, before the deluge, before the separation of the continents, Lemuria was located. Yeah, and let me guess, is this near Mount Shasta?
No, it's more down south but it is near Catalina Island, which was supposedly also part of Lemuria.
That's hardcore. They're saying, well, when I say they, I mean my guides. They kind of pipe in sometimes. They're saying San Francisco is a 100% Lemurian town. So that kind of gives you an idea of the vibe. I just really...
It must be why a lot of people in San Francisco walk around naked. or almost naked.
Well, I think that, the closest proximity I could think of would be more like Polynesia, Hawaii, and I would just like that Hawaiian, mahalo kind of vibe that just everything's real easy and mellow. It's just so much easier on my mind and my heart than the Atlanteans who just had so much to prove. And also, I would say, if you were to break down Atlantis versus Lemuria, this is the common denominator that I often give people between the two cultures. I would say that the Lemurians were the botanists versus the Atlanteans who were the physicists, if that makes any sense.
So I don't know, I've heard some people say the Lemurians were 17 feet and had blue skin.
Oh, that doesn't really resonate with me. I see them more as like tan or caramel skinned or orange skin, kind of like a bronzy, not like a self-tan or orange, but kind of like, I don't know. I get a really good feeling about the word Lemuria. I just really respond to it well. But moving on, I mean, it wasn't exclusively just about that, but I'm just talking about the multitude of ways they were showing me to approach perspective. And in turn, I feel like they were training me to help others in coaching people on ways of perspective. That is major. And the other thing that was, if there was a 10 commandments, they would knock them all down and they would say, this is the one commandment to really, it's the fail-safe that everybody has to, actually there were two of them. The first would be thoughts create reality. That was the first one. That was the golden rule. And the second one was you are responsible for yourself, and that means you are 100% responsible for your thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And until that point, you are a child. But once you accept responsibility for yourself fully in your heart, your body, your mind, and your soul, and you take accountability for your actions and your words and your deeds and your thoughts and your emotions, only then can you consider yourself an adult and, more to the point, a galactic human. Until that point, you are you're just merely being babysat.
That seems similar to...
That's not full empowerment. Full empowerment entails personal responsibility.
Well, that seems similar to the teachings of Ramtha, that the Lemorian warrior that Jay-Z Knight channels.
Oh, sure. Okay, a word about channeling. Nothing against Jay-Z Knight. She just asked me to be her Facebook friend. I said yes, I love her. But I do not resonate with a lot of channeling. And I know that people who really believe that they're talking to the people they're talking to, God bless them. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. It's not my place to say. But it takes many forms. And again, this may fall under, the multidimensional aspects of reality, and that we are multidimensional beings. So what Jay-Z Knight may be doing is, it didn't resonate with me in the slightest. I didn't understand a word Ramtha was saying the few times I've listened. But God bless her, because I know she's doing God's work. I know she's doing what she's doing because she's enlightening people in the language they understand. And I have to speak plain English. I can't do that. I can't, adapt a British accent and walk around a stage in a kimono. I just can't do that. That's not who I am. I'm a little more punk rock than that. And I just want to get down in the dirt and just get to the point. I like Bill Hicks. That's who I like. He's one of my heroes. If I had any heroes, because really, ultimately, you have to be your own hero first. But I really look up to him and I admire him, and it's a damn shame he died so young. He was such a brilliant, underrated comic and philosopher and genius. So that's who I like. That's
Ben Fulford claims that Bill Hicks was killed by the Illuminati.
I would not be surprised at all if that was a fast-acting cancer, because Carla Turner, I think, died the same year he did. So, cheaper by the dozen, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. He's definitely an insurgent, I would think, in the eyes of, the alphabet agencies. He was too brilliant for this world, apparently, for the time that he was living in, and he was a contactee. He really was. He had a UFO experience when he was on magic mushrooms, I think, with his friends, and this is documented in a documentary that was just made about him. And he talks about this mystical experience, talking with this light that spoke to him telepathically. And I know that he was on drugs, but if you look into psychedelics, there's many accounts on many different types where people encounter beings, interdimensional beings, and that's again, that's going into the multidimensional universe, multiverse that we are in. And there are many timelines. That's another thing my guides taught me. There's many ways of being and doing. That's one of their favorite phrases, And so they engaged me with this journey that I really admire, that they had the patience to hang out with me over, because there were some times when I was literally yelling at them and telling them, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. I don't agree with you, blah, blah, blah. And they would sit down with me, and they never abandoned me. They never abandoned me. I mean, they were completely loyal. And even though they were pestering me sometimes and bothering me sometimes, it was with love. It was like the way a family member would look out for you and remind you, did you do this thing you were supposed to do today? And it was never, ever, ever an order. It was never, you will do this. It was a co-collaborative educational experience, just as we choose to come to this planet. And I know a lot of people have a really hard time with that. People choose their families. They literally do before they're born. I chose this. It's my bed. I'm sleeping in it. I chose it. Now.
Yes, you've written on your blog that people who are MyLabs have chosen that life to be on a spiritual level, right?
Yeah, I need to clarify that, because no one in their right mind would choose to be a MyLab consciously. I mean, that's not my point. It's a horrific hellish experience. No one should ever, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, to be in a military abduction. But what my point was is that there's a spiritual contract, and we sort of bite off more than we can chew with lifetimes when we're shown. It's not that there's such a thing as everything is set in stone. It isn't. It's that the main lesson I was told from that, why do bad things happen to good people, is for educational purposes and to uplift the service of humanity as a whole, even the bad stuff. Believe it or not, and this is really hard for people to swallow, and you don't have to take what I'm saying. This is just how it was explained to me, and as I understood it. I may be misinterpreting this, I don't know. But as I understood it, these experiences that I was given, I'll be happy to talk about this unpleasant stuff as well, because there really and truly is a silver lining to this. It has to do with the awakening of humanity. It has to do with the consciousness grid of humanity and people understanding that they are infinite manifestors. And these horrific things that I've described ad nauseum about actually serve an educational purpose. And it's people's choice to take responsibility for deciding whether or not they want to.
We're coming on a break here. But when we come back with Anya Briggs, we will hear what she has to say about the Giza intelligence and their nefarious agenda.